الحمد لله وكفى والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والله جعل لكم من بيوتكم سكنا وقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ألا كلكم راع وكلكم مسؤول عن رعيته سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. So I want to apologize. Last week we couldn't meet in person because I was out of town, and I ended up pre-recording the session before I left. So if you didn't get a chance to listen to it, it's actually the first part. It's related, but it's not fully related. And I discussed the concept of communication and how it's important, very, very important in a marriage, and how miscommunication is one of the major causes of marital conflict after intimacy issues. So briefly, we discussed different components of what goes into communication, which, by the way, is not just one person talking to another or them talking back. There's a lot of different aspects of communication, and how we have to be, completely clear when we say something and not be vague with spouses, where it can be misinterpreted or can cause confusions or problems where they assume something. And we also discuss how sometimes people's personalities play a role in communication, where some people may be quiet and they bottle things in and deal with situations different, whereas someone may be just very outspoken and say everything that's on their mind. So it's a pretty long discussion, and for the sake of time, inshallah, we won't go into it, but I'd recommend, if you guys want to go back and listen to it, you'll find some benefit, because it helped me preparing for it as well. So today I want to expand on the topic of communication, because this really isn't particularly a marriage talk, but it's more of a smart home, and all the different components are involved. And another huge component of a smart home is our children, right? And communication with our kids, especially these days, is huge. A lot of us are kids of first generation parents, or our first generation ourselves, in that we came from overseas, and how we grew up is different than how we're raising our children. And there's no playbook for that. There's nothing there. And then we're sort of learning on the fly. And if we're lucky to have teachers or be around people that have lived here, we have sort of picked up on certain things or read books on certain things and how to deal with children. And the way we communicate is much different. I'll give you my own personal example. When I moved to America in the 90s, I was about 10 years old, and we had lived in Saudi for about 8 years, moved, India before and after that. And when we moved here, my father was in his 40s. And, as a father, you understand that when you're older, you're behind the eight ball and trying to get your family set up financially. So he would work a lot, and we didn't get to spend a lot of time with him. And so we barely spoke, myself and I'm the eldest of 5. So we barely spoke to our father. And even when we had the opportunity to speak, for some reason, maybe it's just Indian culture back home, but we were scared to speak to our fathers, right? It's not like he was someone that hit us all the time or yelled at us. He's actually a very quiet, very soft-hearted person. But we just had that fear inside of us that we wouldn't speak to them. Or when they'd come home after a long day, we say, you know what, we don't want to disturb them, let them rest. And so even if we wanted to ask something from our fathers, we'd say, Ammi, can you ask Abu something, right? So is that concept. And that's completely different how it is now, right? And it's the weirdest thing how that came along, but it's just how it was. And now it's completely different. And for us, it's a different world. And even our parents, my parents, now they see us raising our children, and they also see that it's a completely different ballgame on how they raised us and how we're trying to raise our children. It's a whole different game, right? And again, there's a lot of different components to what goes into a parent-child relationship. And it actually starts before the child even arrives, right? And that's something, we need to work on before we have children. And what do I mean? A good communication between husband and wife itself, right? And this goes, just like I said, beyond talking to one another. Communication is more than just words that come out of our mouth. If we don't have good communication with our spouses, then it becomes harder when we have children, right? If we're always yelling, if one side's always yelling, or both husband and wife are always yelling at each other, the kids will pick up on that. And if we're using derogatory terms and call our spouse by something and look down upon them, the kids may think that it's okay to do that when they meet their friends or when they go to school, right? They don't think anything's wrong with that. And worse is that the kids themselves, if one spouse, if the father is always using mean words to call the mom, they may develop a resentment towards the father, because why is dad being so mean to my mom all the time? Why is he always yelling? Right? The kids pick up on these small things, and they may not even express it to themselves, but they pick up on these things. So again, if we're using foul language, and when we get married and we don't fix that before we have children, it becomes very hard to turn it up. Oh, when I have kids, I'll stop using foul language, swear words, whatever it is, right? If we're always negative towards the other person, calling them names, derogatory terms, kids pick up on that, right? Or if we never smile, we don't smile at our spouse. It's just our nature that we don't smile for whatever reason. We're always grumpy. Kids pick up on that. We talked about a big concept last week was about being on the same page as your spouse, right? Because if children hear conflicting messages, then they'll be confused. And if they do one thing, one parent will be unhappy. For example is, a lot of times parents talk about how much TV time do we give the kids, how much screen time. If the mother says, you know what, they need 1 hour of screen time, and the father says half an hour, because the father's not understanding what's going on at home all day with the mom, the kids are driving them nuts, and they want the kids to be out of sight and put them on a screen for an hour. And the dad thinks, no, only half an hour is optimal. Now, if the kids watch it for an hour because mom said so, then the dad will get upset at the children and also at the wife, at the mother, saying, why are you letting them watch a whole hour? I said only half an hour. And that causes conflict, and the kids see that, right? A lot of things that we've learned as adults is because of what we've seen with our parents, right? That's why in psychology, when people have these issues with anxiety, depression, they want to go kill someone or they're suicidal, when you go to psychiatrists, where do they start? Way back. Let me start with your childhood. What happened in your childhood? How are your parents towards you? Right? It's a big deal. And that's where, we have to understand that and start preparing beforehand if you don't have children. And if we already have children, start thinking, okay, where do I need to fix these issues? Because they can have long-term ramifications on our children. So that's why, communication is something we need to work on, before kids. And if possible, if you already have kids, then we need to double our efforts to make sure that we fix some of these things quicker. And communication, it actually starts before the child is born. Even before the child is born, when the child is in the womb of the mother, right? If husband and wife are arguing, the children can hear that. People have stories about how if, let's say, the mother is always reciting Surah Yasin, or the father is always reciting Surah Yasin, and the child in the womb is hearing that. Sometimes the parents say that when the child, let's say, they go on to memorize Quran, Yasin for them becomes the easiest. It's like they know it, right? And that much, there's an effect there that we don't understand that. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that. But there is stories about, those types of things where, there's some nasheed maybe we sing to the kids to put them to sleep, or we sing when they're remember, it's a soothing for them, right? So that communication starts before, but let's start at birth, right? It's as simple, and maybe it doesn't involve fathers, but it should involve us. As simple as cooing with them, when they're babies, and this especially involves the mothers, giving them attention. Unfortunately, one of the greatest fitnas of our time has come in a form of a quote-unquote communication device, right? A device which was supposedly designed to improve communication, but it's only made things worse, right? And in fact, it's destroyed communication. We no longer know how to talk to people and are really quick to spew off hate, trolling, bullying, comments from behind the screen, whether it's computer screen, whether it's our phone, because we don't see the hurt in other people's eyes when we make those comments. We can quickly say whatever we want to without a filter, not thinking how the other person feels, because we'll never see them, right? And that's a big, big problem. That's a whole separate lecture series in itself about, cell phones and how they've destroyed our society. But the other aspect is that we're addicted to our devices, right? It's really sad. It's really, really sad. When I took my internal medicine review course, the lecture, that was a 3-day course or 6-day course, 2 weekends. The first thing the lecturer said when he got on there was like, I want you to take your cell phone, I want you to put it at arm's length and push it away. It's like, I don't want that cell phone even near you, because, we want what we call dopamine hits. I want to quickly look at Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, whatever it is, and turn it away. And we can see something, we smile and put it away. It's like, this is the most important course of your life. You need to pass your exam. And our mind is used to having distractions and push that away, right? So if you look at a mother, right? When a mother in the initial phases, when they're nursing their child, it's downtime for the mother, right? They are stuck with the child now. This moment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of the hikmah is to form that bond between the mother and a child. When they're nursing, they're the closest to them. They're closest to their heart. They're supposed to be having eye contact with the child, smiling. If you ever, as a father, if you've ever been in that situation where you watch a child nurse, you see how much love there is between the mother and the child. Imagine if a mother now has a cell phone, right? The child just nursing and just checking her WhatsApp status, smiling, and the child notices that. I mean, we don't understand these things psychologically, but long term, these things have an effect. The child are realizing, you know what? I'm not that important. Mom's cell phone is more important, or dad's cell phone is more important to them, right? And these bonding moments, we lose them over time. And unfortunately, it's really sad. And I'm saying this about myself too, that we realize these things sometimes when it's too late. When the kids have gone, become adults and left the house, and we start missing them, we start thinking, reflecting on our lives, saying, what have I done? Right? I've lost all these, especially when kids don't listen, right? They come to a point in their life where they will no longer listen to you as a parent, as much as maybe as they did before, because now they're adults, they're forming their own opinions, they have their own ideas, and it may be different from what the parents are doing. So again, these things start at a very, very young age, right? And again, when the children grow up, we need to have the communication. It doesn't mean we sit down with them and say, 4-year-old son, let's have a talk about our life and where you're going and what you're going to become. No, it's just simple, small things, and we'll talk about that, right? Because if we miss that chance when they were younger, when we are able to influence them, because for them, we are their whole world, right? They don't know anything else. Whatever we have at home, we are their whole world. Whatever we do for them, it's like the truth, the ultimate truth. My mom and dad said it, unless they're exposed to TV and they're watching TV from a young age, right? That's when they get other influence. But if you're able to protect them from that, then what we say, the influence we have over them, that goes a long way for them, right? And if it's that opportunity when they get older, that influence will fade, right? We will no longer be the coolest people in their eyes. And unfortunately, when we start realizing they have their own opinions, especially when we're not there, when they were younger to influence upbringing, and someone else had their attention, whether it was TV, whether it was social media, whether it was their friends, right? Then it's too late. Then it becomes an uphill battle trying to correct the wrong ideologies in their mind. And these are not just ideologies about society, but also about the deen. Because now we're being bombarded with atheism, the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why do we need this? We're our own people. Science is the key. All these different thoughts that are coming in, right? Those things, it's hard to battle with them if we don't have a relationship. So in order for us to connect with them, we have to start forming these connections at an early age and form that relationship so that when they start having questions in their life or are struggling with something, they know mom and dad are always there for us. Right? They will always be there for us. We can go to them and ask them questions. But if we don't have that, if you don't communicate with them properly, if we ignore them, are too busy with their own lives, and are just, the kids will grow up in, with their friends or their family, and we lose that opportunity. So inshallah, we'll go through some simple tips on how to connect with our children. Even if our kids are grown up, this will inshallah help because it's never too late. With du'as, we have a special power of du'a as a parent that can help correct some of these things, but also means that we have to double our effort, and inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will help us. So first major point in communicating with kids I want to bring up is that we need to show them as much love as possible, right? And this is very challenging for a lot of us, right? Some of us have a very hard time expressing love, not just to our spouses, but even to our children. We're just grumpy people. Some of us may have never hugged our children or kissed them or said, I love you to them. Right? Inshallah, the mothers are still doing this because inshallah that's in their nature. But I'm speaking from a male perspective, especially on this idea, right? We have this notion that we have to show them tough love because that's how we were raised, right? Our father wasn't there giving us hugs or kissing us, saying good job. They were reprimanding us when we did something bad. And if we did something good, it's quiet. That means just accept it. Oh, they did something good, right? And what do we say? We say they never gave us any hugs or kiss, and we turned out fine. So we're going to raise this. I will guarantee you that if we have that mentality and that type of attitude with our children, that they don't need to feel love at home, they will find love outside, right? They will find love outside the home. And when they don't want to come anymore because there's no love at home, they end up moving in with Tom and Mary because they showed them love, right? Love is a very, very, very powerful emotion, right? And that's something that we don't think about. And I'm not talking about the love between a husband and a wife or mother and child. Even us as believers, love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is such a deep concept that we don't understand and we don't ever get taught. As children, we're always raised with, if you don't do this, Allah is going to punish you. He's watching you. It's like as if he's standing there with a lightning, and as soon as you do something wrong, he's going to throw that lightning down at you, right? We're not taught Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves us. He wants us to do good. He made Jannah for us. He's just waiting for us. He just wants to reward us as much as possible. We pray one prayer, He gives us a reward of 10 prayers. We do one good deed, He gives us a reward of 10 good deeds, right? So this love is a very, very powerful tool and emotion that children are looking for, and children look for that. They do silly things to try to get attention and to get love. They're running and doing cartwheels saying, look, Baba, look at me. It's silly in our eyes, but for them, they want that affection from the parents. They want to say, good job, great job. And that's something we have to do with our children as well. Right. And there's so many different ways of dealing with children in terms of raising them. And I'll give you my personal example and also what my teachers have taught me and what I've seen, because I have 4 children and I come from a very large family, and I can tell you 100% sure that love always wins. What do I mean? If we show our children love, whether it's through hugs and kisses, just talking to them, you don't need to buy them things. Buying kids something doesn't mean that you love them, right? Just hanging out with them, when they're watching their kids shows, sitting with them and laughing with them when they're laughing, giving them attention, they will love, respect, and honor us, and will listen to us when we have something to say or we need something, right? And if you contrast with a parent that never smiles and they're always saying, no, you can't do that. No, don't ask me that. No, and they don't spend time with them. They're always quote unquote busy with their work or with their life, and they don't see them. When you ask them something, they may do it because you're their parents, but they may not have that love towards you, right? And when they get older, it's quick to write that off. But when kids do it because they love you, why? Because mama and baba love me, and I want to do something to make them happy, right? I want to do something that makes them happy. If they ask me to get something, they'll be happy with me, so I'm going to do this, right? And when they do something that you don't like, if you have that love relationship with your children, if you have that deep love, they understand that you love them, and you're not just a mean mom or mean dad, always yelling, always hitting them, right? When you have that love, when they do something that's disappointing to you, we don't need to yell. We don't need to bring out the dynamite and the blowhorn and saying, how come you did this? You're yelling and screaming at the child. Because if you just withdraw that love and say, you know what, I'm really disappointed in you. And this, I'm telling you from personal experience, they will start crying as if you beat them. Because for them, that pain of your mom or dad saying, I'm disappointed in you, is too much for them. Because they feel that love withdrawn at that time. Right? And you do to teach them a lesson. It's not to make them feel bad for the whole day. It's just a teaching point that, you know what, I'm really disappointed in you. For them, that's more painful than a hit. Right? We're used to, in our culture, we're used to hitting kids. That's why we all grew up. It doesn't work. Right? You become callous. Then you start hitting your own kids, and that just hitting other people, then violence becomes okay. But when you pull that love from them, it causes them so much pain that inshallah they never do it again. And this is not to say that you never need to yell. There are some boundaries that if they're crossed, we need to be more stern with them, right? And more stern means that we let them know, whether it's raising our voice or hitting something on the side saying, that's not acceptable. You cannot hit someone. You cannot yell at your mom. You cannot yell at your dad. You cannot treat someone that way. But that has to be saved for when things get really out of hand. So now with this background of love, let's go over some small things that we can do, right? So the first thing is that we all probably have kids that are of school age or they will be going to school, right? The first thing when kids come home from school, this is very, very important. This Mashayikh talk about this all the time. When kids come home from school or we pick them up from school, try to give them an undivided attention, even if it's for 10 minutes. Just by asking, how was your day? What did you learn in school? And the reason for this is because, don't just get on the phone. You pick up, it's a common routine. We're picking up the kids. We're busy with talking to our friends online. We get the kid in the car. They're doing whatever they want. And we're going on with our lives, talking to our friends. It's important because sometimes kids are taught things or they learn things in school from their friends or from their teachers. And when you open that door to them, what did you learn in school today? What did you learn in math, science? Kids are innocent. They don't know what's right or what's wrong. They may not know what's right or what's wrong, but they may tell you something. You're like, oh man, that's a big problem. Right? And at that moment, you have to hold yourself and say, what? What did you say? And let them say whatever they want to say. And file that away and say, I have to address this issue. And at a different time, you can maybe ask them when they're not even thinking about it. Oh, you said this about your friend. He said this. What else? You go on. Or the teacher says something. And then you have to decide, how are you going to address this issue? Right? So when you have that time, if you're on your phone, you'll miss those because things are fresh in their mind when you pick them up from school, right? They're right. They just literally came right. Or anything, not just school. Let's say they went out, with their friends. Oh, what did you guys talk about? They'll say things instantly. They don't even think about it. Or you went out to a basketball tournament. What happened? What did you see there? Someone, different things you pick up on them. And have frequent conversations with them, right? Along the same line. Right? It should be open-ended, a space where they should feel that can discuss anything with you as a parent. And it starts as a child. It's hard to say that to a teenager if you haven't had that relationship. Because they're going to be like, I'm not talking to my dad about this. I'm not going to talk to my mom about this. But if you have that relationship with a child, when you open this door, like, hey, what happened? It's just dad being dad. Oh, yeah, what happened? How are things going? You have an open-ended conversation, right? And a recent piece of advice my teacher gave, because my kids are now getting older, and so we have to address a lot of issues, is, he said that as kids go into teenage years and into high school, that I should set aside one day out of the month and tell the child, you know what, this is your day. You're allowed to discuss, talk, ask anything you want. And it could be questions about anything, whether it could be question about drugs, whether it's about alcohol, whether it's about puberty, opposite gender, having a relationship with them, even the S word, right? Talk about stress, anxiety, screen them on mental health issues, because kids, they want to let people know how they're feeling, but we're so into our own world that we don't pick up on these signs. And the only way to pick up on them is when you talk with them. When they say, oh, I'm sad. If they're always saying sad, they're like, oh, why are you always sad? But if you don't think about it, you don't talk with them, you don't pick that up, right? So, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us and our children from mental health disorders, because it's a huge problem these days, right? Even questions about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Because if they have questions and doubts about Islam when they're young and they go on to college and take these courses, it's a big problem, right? So that's why instead of have one day, they're allowed to ask whatever you want, right? And when you have that conversation, you cannot react, especially when they say something way off. Like, for example, your son says, Baba, what if I like a girl? We're like, well, what? You're 13 years old, you're talking, no, that's haram. Muslims don't date, and Islam, the only type of relationship you can have is after you get married, right? And it may be that they already have someone they like. It may be that they have a deeper relationship just than a classmate, right? Maybe they're already texting them. They were just testing you to see how you would react. And if we open our mouth and react like that, it's like, okay, I can't talk to dad about that because that's not what he wants, right? So these small things are a big deal, right? But if we have an open relationship, then we can talk about how we treat women in Islam, how we have relations with the opposite gender, what is the right time, why we can't, have relations with them before marriage, why to get married, how to get married, right? And if you don't have the answer in that moment, say, you know what, that's a very good question. I need to think about that a little bit more. We as parents need to think that we have to have answers all the time. We don't have to have answers, right? That shows our humanity as well, that we're not angels, we're not perfect. You know what, Mama, Papa doesn't know, but they're gonna find out for me. We can go ask the scholar how to address this question. That question about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How do I explain certain issues? Because it may be set in our mind, but it's hard for me to explain to my child or someone else issues about aqidah. How is Allah watching all of us? He has hands and feet. What does that mean? Right? Those questions come up. And when they go to college and school, the other people are trying to break them down, right? Shaitan's trying to break people's iman. So he may get caught up with that. And sometimes we need to bring up issues to talk to the kids ourselves. We have to bring them up, right? Because kids are already hearing buzzwords from their friends, from social media, TV shows, even quote-unquote cartoons that we may let them watch. They're already getting some messages that they've heard, but they don't know what it means if you've protected them, right? And we don't know how that message is being translated to them. What am I talking about? LGBTQ, homosexuality, about, atheism, Scientology. All these thoughts are being slowly, being given to the child. And it's not just TV. You can say, fine, we have no TV at all. How are your kids going to survive without a cell phone in school? They're doing, some sort of programming on computer, or they have to put answers from their phone and it shows up on the board. If you don't have you can't give them a cell phone, they're not going to do well in school, right? Or they're not going to look, you look like a quote unquote dork if you don't have a smartphone. How do you have to live in that situation? But the only way to approach these issues is if you have an open conversation with them and you bring about some of these issues yourself. Then how to, my teacher called it inoculating them, giving them a vaccine. Well, what's a vaccine? A vaccine, like a flu vaccine, it's a dead flu that you introduce to the body, and it shows the body, okay, this is what a flu looks like. You have a small reaction, the body says, okay, I understand now. If I get the real flu, what happens? So when someone gets the flu vaccine doesn't prevent them from not having any reaction at all. It just says when they get the actual flu, the body knows how to fight it. So when we talk about these issues with our children and address them properly, that we may not believe in this, but we don't say anything to other people. Or what is our belief and how do we reconcile that with what society is doing? Then they're better equipped when they go out in school or in the workforce and not say something that may be detrimental to their own work or make them lose their job, because it's a big deal nowadays, right? So again, this all starts from a young age, having that conversation with them. And it's not too late now too, and say, you know what, let's talk about these certain things. The next thing is that you have to be fun and outgoing with your children, right? Fun and outgoing with your children, spending time with them. right? From a young age, you should be playful with them. Although this is not quote unquote a traditional sense of communication, it really is, because kids really pick up a lot, like playing board games. In the summer, having a water balloon fight with them. You have these guns that shoot water. Play with them. They just want to spend time with parents, right? For them, that's bonding. Play sports with them. Go to pottery with them. Paint with them. Family vacation. This is a huge thing. Family vacation without anyone else, right? At least one trip with your immediate family. Who's immediate family? Mom, dad, and kids. Because seeing mom and dad laughing, playing with the kids, it forms those connections. And for us as parents, sometimes it's easy to say, here son, here daughter, here's a brand new phone, and give them a new toy, and now go and play by yourself. But remember, mom and dad love you, right? That's not what love and communication is about. You can't buy love. Or you can buy them the most expensive toy. They'll come back in a few weeks and say, oh, they're bored, because that's not what they're looking for. That's our way of pawning off spending time with them, because we're too busy in our own life. And yes, we may be busy, but if we miss those opportunities, then we're going to regret it later on. I was talking to a physician recently, and he was saying how his daughter's getting married. And he's like, he was giving me advice, like, if you have kids, spend time with them. Because when my kids were growing up, I was always like, okay, next step is get them to school, and now they'll go to college, they'll be out of the house, I got to provide for them, and I want them to be out of the house, I want to have emptiness because I want to enjoy my time again. And when they get married and they leave, you think back and say, wow, the house is empty. Now what? Because we have that. It's like we want our own time. And kids are hard to raise. It's not easy. It's easy to find a babysitter that'll take care of that for you. It's easy to find, X, Y, and Z, do things for you, and you don't spend time with the kids, right? You can't buy love. The road trips that you take with your children, despite the craziness that happens, the yelling and the screaming and the kids fighting, I will guarantee you they remember that. I remember that from my childhood. Long trips to New York. And you're fighting with your siblings, but you remember, that you still remember that trip. Getting a ticket, speeding over there. All these small things. My wife was telling me recently about a family that had 3 sons, and they went on this 8-hour trip. And sons, mashallah, are very, they have their own personality. So they're always fighting and yelling, and, they had their fun too, but that road trip was like, we're never doing this again. A few weeks later, the kids say, when can we go on the next trip? They're like, what? And so sometimes we think that, they may not have enjoyed any of these things, and kids won't tell you that all the time, right? But sometimes they will, if you have that relationship with them, saying, wow, you really like that trip? Okay, let's do it again. That's great. So again, spending time with your immediate family is a huge deal, because you learn a lot about each other. You learn about what they like, what they don't like, what are good things, how to approach things, and you get the family moment. You spend time with them and you give them advice. Right? And it doesn't have to be expensive vacations to the Bahamas and in China and Japan. It's simple things. The kids don't care about that. We want to go to new places. But if you ask the kids and involve them in decision making, for us, our family trip, we have a rule, 1 family trip per year, just with immediate family. And every year we go to the same place, California, San Diego, because the kids love it. I want to go someplace else, but the kids, you ask them, where do you want to go? Like, we just want to go to California. We want to throw football on the beach with Baba. We want to play Frisbee there. We want to go out to eat at a Chinese restaurant that we really like. And it's the same thing we do every single year. And you're like, why do you do the same thing? You're like, why you go back there again? But that's what the kids want, right? They don't want new fancy things. They don't want to go to the newest resort, newest, theme park. They just want to spend time with their parents because they know we're busy. When we're in our homes, when we're running our life, when we're working, mom and dad are both busy. If we get them away and just have them to ourselves, they appreciate that so much. And you go back and we take pictures and we go over these slideshows and we talk about, silly things that happened on the trip, and they remember that, right? And that was form family bonds, right? The next thing is that, don't ignore children. What do I mean by that? When they ask questions, don't ignore them. I'll give you an example. Sometimes we're busy on our phone, we have our phone, we're looking at WhatsApp, talking to our friends and smiling, and all of a sudden our kid says, Baba, like, yeah, good job. But we're good at that. And the kids sense that and they pick that up, saying, Baba doesn't care. And it could be something as, there's saying something important, like, Baba, I just scored the highest score I had the highest grade in my class. You're like, yeah. They see that, right? And they see, my dad doesn't value anything I say. My mom doesn't value anything. They're too busy with their friends on their phone. They're smiling and giggling. And again, this is not to call anyone else out. I'm talking about myself personally too. I'm always busy with the phone. And you feel bad inside when those moments happen. It's like, I should have put the phone down, right? So when children are coming up to you, don't ignore them. Have a time where say, you know what, from 7, 8 o'clock, I'm not touching my phone. I'm not touching my phone, no matter that people can wait, right? If something emergent happens, they'll get a hold of us. We think that life is emergency. Everything has to be responded right away. It does not have to be that way, right? So when something like that happens, we have two options. One is that either or we put our phone down and say, okay, what do you want to talk about? Or if we're really busy, that conversation is really important, say, can you just wait, give me 2 minutes? Let me just finish up the conversation and then I'll talk to you. So they feel empowered. They feel, oh wow, Baba is going to take time away from his important conversation. They don't know we're joking about a trip that we're going to take with our friends. They think it's important, right? The Baba's taking time away from his important conversation. He's going to talk to me. It makes them feel important. Makes them feel loved that he's taking time out from his busy day to talk to me. It also teaches kids how to multitask and prioritize things, because they're going to have multiple things going on in their life. And you can't handle all of it. You need to prioritize. Okay, my kids are important to me. I need to put this phone away and talk with them, spend time with them, right? So this is gonna be a long talk, but I think it's important that we go through it. So some other small tips. When you have kids, it's important to call them with affection, call them with love. Whether it's honey, whether it's dear, whether it's in our own native language, laddu, or a nickname that's really nice, not something like, hey, idiot, come here. Right? That really hurts their ego. Right? We may not be surprised that I'm saying these things that people do say these things. Right? They use all kinds of words. And it may not be in English. It may be in Urdu that we don't realize. Nalayak, bewakoof. Right? These Urdu words that we have heard from our parents and we just kind of pass it down. Think about what does that mean? Nalayak, not capable. Right? You're calling a child that, what's that going to do to their ego? Right? My dad just calling me names. And then why would they not call other people names? They'll call their siblings names. They'll call their parents names eventually. Right? The second thing is treat children with respect. This is kind of counter to what we're taught, especially in the Desi culture. When we go to a setting, we expect all the children to come say salam to me. I'm the older person. You have to say salam to me first. That's not how it goes. The Prophet ﷺ showed us examples of how to be with children. Right? You always say, you should go out of your way. You should say salam first. Treat them with respect. They will treat you with respect, even at a young age. And as they get older, that respect is what? Shared decision making, as I call it. We're going on a family trip. Where do you guys want to go? Instead of us planning everything, thinking, you know what? I got to find the next newest destination because the kids want it. Let's go to the Bahamas. And the kid's like, no, I don't want to go to the Bahamas. I don't want to go. I just want to go back to the same place, California again. He's like, what? It's like, yeah, we want to go back there. It saves us money. It saves us the headache of finding a whole new itinerary, what to do. And we already know everything there, right? So when you have that, they feel like, okay, we're not just, dad's not just telling us what to do. Mom's not just telling us what to do. They're asking our opinion. It could be simple as when we're going to buy a new car. We may not we may not even listen to their opinion, but the fact that, what do you think about this, guys? A Honda or a Toyota? A Sienna or an Odyssey? Right? Take them when you go car shopping. So they feel like, oh, they get that excitement of how to make a decision. They learn these things, right? Treating them with respect, not just, oh, you're some little kid. For us, our kids, even when we're 70, our kids are 40, they're still butt chicken. Right? That's how our parents teach us. What do you know? You could be father of 10 kids and you still don't know anything compared to your parents. Right? The respect goes mutual. So acknowledge their feelings. Right? Don't brush it aside. Don't make them feel as if their feelings are worthless. Right? Otherwise, they'll hide it from us and they'll bottle it up. And that's how mental health disorders form, because nobody spoke with them about this. Why are you feeling sad? Tell me. What will make you happy? What can we do to make you happy? Why are you angry? How do you deal with anger? Right? Yes, I understand. This is something you can get angry about, but this is how you deal with it. Right? Don't belittle their ideas or thoughts. I want to be a firefighter when I grow up. Well, what kind of field is that? You're not going to make any money. You can't have a good life with that. Bekarka, there's nothing. Go be a doctor, engineer. Right? You destroy their dreams. Kids want to be NBA players all the time. We know they're never going to go there, but you don't say, come on, be real. No, let them say, yeah, mashallah, inshallah, if you have good skills, you can go to the NBA. Kids will always change their minds. They want to be a karate kid one day, they want to be a firefighter the next day, they want to be an astronaut the next day. Doesn't mean that's what they're going to end up doing. And whatever they want to do, we have to encourage them. Because we live in a different time than how we were brought up. We have to let the kids choose what they want to be and encourage them as long as it's halal and they're making good living. Right? It may not be that they want to be doctors and live in a mansion. They may just want to may want to be a teacher, or they may want to be something that doesn't make a six-digit salary, but it makes them happy. And at the end of the day, if they're not happy, then their life will be miserable, their marriage will be miserable, their children will be miserable, and that's just a disaster, that recipe for disaster. Lastly, always be positive, right? If there's a highlight of this talk with communication, it's always be positive, always find a positive spin to anything, right? This is so important for kids, because if we're always a Debbie Downer, as they say, always looking at the glass half empty, then kids will end up seeing that way. Then they'll develop these inferiority complex, right? Oh yeah, things are not going to work. Oh, it's always raining outside, even though one day out of the year it rains. They're like, oh, it's raining. Our attitude, our verbal cues, the kids pick up on that, right? Always be positive. There's always something positive. Even if your child fails an exam, find a positive spin to it. There's always a positive. Alhamdulillah, this is good, because if you fail now, then now you're going to work hard and get a better grade at the end. Whereas if you're getting, B's and B's and B's, if you fail the final exam, you can't go back from that. There's always a positive spin to everything. In fact, even in the Sunnah, we're taught that when we go visit patients in a hospital, when we go visit sick patients, you're not supposed to tell them, oh, you're going to die. Oh, I'm so sorry you're sick. You give them positive news, encouragement, because then that will give them maybe energy to fight it. Right? So we always have to be positive and full of energy. Just think of people that you know. If someone's always sad and depressed, right? Do you want to be with them? No, because it makes you like, being around you makes me sad and depressed. Or if someone's always angry, they're called pataha, they're like firecrackers. Something small, you light them and then boom, everything goes up. You're like, no, man, I don't want to say anything in front of them. I want to stay away from them, because that affects you. But if we're someone that's positive and full of energy and always seeing the good side of things, the kids will develop that. And that always is going to be good in the long run. So as I mentioned, these small moments over time, they add up and they cultivate that relationship between a parent and a child, and even husband and wife and anyone else around us, right? There are books and books written about these topics, and I'm sure, we can talk for hours about this, but this is just to highlight a few important issues that, building a smart home and communication in that smart home is very, very high on that list. Right? And it starts down from husband and wife's communication, trickles down to interaction with our children. Because for us, children are our most prized possession. It's not our house, it's not our car, right? We go to such deep lengths to make sure there's food to eat for them, right? There's clothes for them to wear. There's they get the best education. And those are very important things. Don't get me wrong. But that's not what kids are looking for, right? The kids, and they're not going to appreciate those things until they become parents. They're looking for love. And we as parents are going to give them that. Communication with them. If you can't communicate with them, if you can't smile to them, you can't build that love, right? And building that relationship over time, because when things go wrong in their life, they need someone to talk to. If we're always yelling at them, always calling them derogatory names, when something goes wrong, they'll go find someone else. Right? They'll give them that love or give them that advice, especially in their teenage years or college years, or even when they get married. And if they don't find the right person or the right influence, then Allah save all of us. Right? And if we as parents don't have that relationship where they're comfortable asking us these difficult questions, they will look to other sources. And they'll make mistakes that they may not be able to recover from. A lot of parents come to ulama and imams with issues with their children. And they don't come when the child is young, when they're 3-4 years old. It's usually when the child's already in high school, they may already be doing drugs, they may already be doing promiscuous things, and they're at a point where they're not going to listen to anyone. They've already formed their own ideas and opinions, and now they're coming to the imams and sheikhs saying, what do I do with my children? And you think, you know what? This is, as they say in baseball, this is a ninth inning. Right? When things have already happened, so many things have happened along the way, and now you're coming and asking these people how to save my child. And it becomes very difficult, right? So we have to go the extra mile to preserve our homes and our children, right? And we have to be there for them, because there's a lot of other things that are competing for their time, competing for attention with us. It's their phones, it's their friends, it's the TV, it's the movies, it's the shows, and they will get that time with them. But we have to make our time be the best time with them. Because children are innocent and we can train them from a young age, right? Inshallah, maybe we can have a lecture series dedicated on parenting and raising kids, because it's such an essential topic, especially these days. And no one has a right answer. Everyone comes with a different background. They have different ideas, and maybe we can sit down and discuss these ideas and see how we can raise kids in a proper way. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to understand the hadith about us being shepherds and responsible for our flock, whether we're husbands or wives or children, to allow us to have a better relationship with our children and our spouses. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us and guide our children and keep them on the deen. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have better communication skills and improve our akhlaq such that they become like the Prophet. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah rabbil alameen.